Hey guys, this is Chaos Shinobi. This is what if Naruto is the reincarnation of Red-Haired Shanks. Naruto will be very powerful and have a very unique power not seen in the Naruto world. Now let's begin, Chapter 20. The Serpent God and the Conquerors will Version 2. Version 1 was scrapped. The wind across the desolate plateau fell silent, as if holding its breath. Orochimaru's chilling grin was the only thing that moved, a slash of white against his pale face. "You're no god," Naruto stated, his voice a flat line of defiance. "You're just a snake, and I'm here to cut off your head." Orochimaru chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Kukuku, an amusing sentiment. He didn't move. Instead, the ground at Naruto's feet erupted. Earth release, hiding like a mole technique. Not Orochimaru, but the sword of Kusanagi, shot up from the earth like a silver viper, aimed directly at Naruto's chin. Naruto's head snapped back, the blade missing by a hair's breadth. He didn't jump. He didn't even flinch. He simply leaned away, an impossible bend from the waist. His observation Haki hadn't just warned him. It had shown him the exact trajectory. As the sword flew past, Orochimaru emerged from the ground behind Haku, his movements fluid and silent. "Your friend is fast," he hissed, his hand shooting towards Haku's neck. But Haku was already gone, dissolving into a shimmer of frost. The real Haku was already in one of her 20 newly formed, demonic mirroring ice crystals. Her eyes narrowed. This was their rhythm, forged in battle. "A clever trick," Orochimaru mused, turning his attention to the mirrors. "Chojuro," Haku's voice echoed from all 20 mirrors at once. "Now!" Water release, great waterfall technique. Chojuro, who had been gathering chakra, slammed his hands on the ground. A colossal torrent of water erupted from beneath Orochimaru, not to crush him, but to turn the entire plateau into a shallow, churning lake. The purpose was twofold: limit Orochimaru's ability to tunnel and provide Haku with an infinite source of ammunition. Orochimaru was blasted into the air by the initial torrent. As he landed gracefully on the water's surface, 1,000 needles of ice and water materialized around him. 1,000 flying water needles of death. Haku's attack was instant and relentless. Orochimaru's response was contemptuous. Summoning Rashomon, a single demonic gate burst from the water, taking the full brunt of the needle storm with a deafening rattle. But it was a screen. Behind it, Orochimaru's neck elongated, and from his mouth, he spat the Kusanagi blade, which shot like a bullet towards Chojuro. Naruto moved to intercept, but his Haki screamed a new warning. He spun, his saber drawn and coated in black armament Haki, just in time to block a vicious strike from a second Orochimaru who had emerged from the water beside him. A mud clone. "Chojuro, let it come!" Naruto yelled, shoving the mud clone back. Chojuro, hearing the command, did something insane. Instead of blocking the incoming Kusanagi, he let it get close, then swung Hiramakari, now a massive hammer, past the blade, using the wind pressure from his swing to slightly alter the sword's trajectory. It missed him by inches, embedding itself deep into a distant cliff wall. In that same instant, Haku used Chojuro's lake. Ice release, certain kill ice spears, dozens of massive, razor-sharp ice spikes erupted from the water around Orochimaru, forcing him to leap from his defensive gate. He landed right where Naruto knew he would. This was the moment. Naruto stopped toying with the mud clone. He held out his single, open hand towards it. Armament. Emission. A small, invisible shockwave of Haki shot from his palm. The mud clone didn't just destabilize. It imploded, blasted into nothingness by the force. Naruto then turned his gaze to the real Orochimaru. "You seem to be running out of tricks." Orochimaru's smile was wider now, manic. "Tricks? My dear boy, the performance has just begun." He retrieved his sword with a psychic tug and slammed it into the water. Formation of 10,000 snakes. The water boiled, and a writhing island of serpents burst forth. A true nest of horrors, each one with blades glinting in its mouth. Haku and Chojuro moved to defend, but Naruto held up his hand. "Stay back." He took a deep breath, and the air around him grew heavy. The red of his hair seemed to deepen. This wasn't the explosive rage of the Kyuubi. It was the absolute, suffocating pressure of a king claiming his domain. Conqueror's Haki. The thousands of snakes froze. The weaker ones dissolved into smoke, their summoning contracts broken by the sheer force of will. The stronger ones lay paralyzed, trembling on the water's surface. Orochimaru's eyes widened. The killing intent of an elite shinobi was one thing. This was another. This was the fundamental power of rule. What is this power? He hissed, his scientific mind unable to categorize it. This is the difference between us, Naruto said. He walked forward, stepping onto the surface of the water, each step firm as if on solid ground. His haki pulsed with every step, the remaining snakes parting before him like a wave. He appeared before Orochimaru. He didn't draw his sword. He didn't charge a ninjutsu. He simply drew back his fist, his arm glowing with a faint, internal light. This was a more advanced application of emission, the concept of internal destruction. Orochimaru, sensing an unprecedented level of danger, brought the sword of Kusanagi up to defend. Naruto's fist shot forward. It didn't connect with the sword. It stopped a single inch from the flat of the blade. And a shockwave of haki erupted from his knuckles, passing through the legendary sword. Crack! The sword of Kusanagi, an unbreakable blade, didn't shatter, but a high-pitched whine emanated from it as the haki resonated within. Orochimaru was blasted backwards, not by the force of the blow, but by the haki that had passed through his sword and struck his body directly. He coughed up blood, his inner organs reeling from the internal assault. You struck me from the inside? He gasped, a look of utter disbelief on his face. I told you, Naruto said, his fist still smoking with faint spiritual energy. I'm here to cut off your head. Enraged and desperate, Orochimaru abandoned his human form. 8 branches technique. His body exploded into the colossal 8-headed serpent, a true monster that blotted out the sky. It was his ultimate technique, a display of power meant to crush nations. Each of the 8 heads opened its mouth, gathering chakra for 8 different, simultaneous ninjutsu attacks. Haku, Chojuro, now, Naruto commanded. Haku entered her mirrors, which she had reformed high above. Ice release, shattered mirror shards. She shattered all 20 mirrors herself, sending a literal blizzard of razor-sharp ice shrapnel down onto the colossal beast, peppering its hide and distracting its senses. Chojuro, seeing the monster gathering power, unleashed Hiramakariai's ultimate attack. Bloody mist sword art. Bone mutilation. A cloud of thousands of light blue chakra needles shot from his blade, impaling the serpent's massive body. They didn't cause deep wounds, but they began to disrupt its complex chakra pathway system, causing its ninjutsu to flicker and destabilize. This was the opening. Naruto looked up at the roaring god beast. You are big, Naruto acknowledged, but a king bows to no god. He drew his saber. Wind howled around the blade, and black-red lightning from his conqueror's haki crackled over it, the two forces merging. Divine departure. He didn't aim for one head. He aimed for the center of mass. He swung his sword in a clean, horizontal arc. What followed was not an explosion. It was an act of uncreation. A wave of black and green energy shot forward. It did not explode on contact. It passed through the 8-headed serpent. For a split second, the monster froze. Then, a perfectly clean, horizontal line appeared across all 8 necks and the central body. The top half of the colossal serpent slid off the bottom half with a wet, heavy sound, before dissolving into a shower of blood and dead snakes, crashing into the water below. The battle was over. The silence was absolute. Haku and Chojuro stared, their minds unable to process the sheer, effortless finality of that single blow. But from the falling wreckage, Orochimaru's true form, the single giant white snake, shot out, not in attack, but in a desperate, terrified retreat. It lunged, its mouth open, aiming to swallow the nearest source of life to fuel its escape. Chojuro. Living corpse reincarnation. Oh no, you don't, Naruto's voice echoed. Before the snake could reach Chojuro, Naruto was there, his hand placed gently on the serpent's head. The world dissolved. In the dark, psychic plane, Orochimaru's soul gloated. You fool! You followed me into my domain. Here, I am. He was cut off. He turned to see not a boy, but a towering silhouette of a man with one arm, his presence a burning, red sun in the darkness. The conqueror's will was absolute here. You wanted to see my power. A voice that was both Naruto and Shanks boomed through the mental space. You wanted to know my secrets. The red sun flared. Then drown in them. Back on the plateau, the giant white snake went limp, then fell to the water, dead. Its soul had not just been defeated. It had been shattered, forced into a deep comatose state by a will it could never hope to comprehend. A tiny, terrified white snake shot out of the dead husk, fleeing for its life. Naruto stood over the water, his breathing steady. He looked at his two stunned allies. Well, he said, his lazy grin returning. That was a decent warm-up. The silence on the waterlogged plateau was deafening. The last vestiges of Orochimaru's monstrous chakra vanished as the tiny white snake disappeared into the earth. A legend forced into a terrified, ignominious retreat. The tension that had held the very air in a vice snapped, and the world seemed to rush back in. Haku and Chojuro stood frozen, their minds still struggling to process the sheer, world-breaking scale of the battle they had just survived. They had witnessed power that shouldn't be possible, a monster that defied logic, and a boy who had put that monster in its place. Naruto's form, which had seemed as indomitable as a mountain moments before, suddenly wavered. The immense aura of a conqueror receded, flowing back into him like a tide going out, leaving behind the weary frame of a young man who had pushed himself to his limit. His shoulders slumped. His breath came in a ragged, deep sigh, and the last of his strength gave out. He didn't collapse. He simply fell backward, landing with a soft splash in the shallow lake Chojuro had created. He floated there on his back, his single arm outstretched, his eyes closing as he stared up at the gray IWA sky. The water lapped gently around his exhausted body. Haku and Chojuro rushed to his side, their faces etched with concern. Naruto-kun, Haku cried out, kneeling in the water. Are you all right? Just tired, Naruto mumbled, his voice a low, weary murmur. Used a little too much juice. A small, tired smile touched his lips. Think I'm gonna take a quick nap, right here. Chojuro looked around nervously, his eyes scanning the surrounding cliffs. And Naruto-san, we can't. This is still the middle of the exam. It's not safe. Naruto's eyes fluttered open a fraction, his gaze finding his two allies. There was no trace of the king or the conqueror in them now, only a profound and absolute trust. It's safe enough, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I trust you two to watch my back. With that, his eyes closed for good, and his breathing evened out into the slow, steady rhythm of sleep. He was utterly vulnerable, a sleeping giant in a field of wolves, placing his life entirely in their hands. Haku looked at Naruto's peaceful face, then at the devastation surrounding them. A fierce, protective resolve hardened her features. This boy had saved her village, saved her master, and had just fought a battle for the ages alongside her. She would not let him down. She gave a single, firm nod. Rest well, Naruto-kun. No one will touch you. Chojuro, seeing her determination, swallowed his fear. He hefted Hiramakerii and stood guard, his timid nature replaced by the unwavering duty of a swordsman protecting his charge. Kiri's savior was resting, and he would be the shield. Meanwhile, in another sector of the shattered peaks, Team 10 had been moving with methodical precision. Shikamaru's strategies had allowed them to secure 2 of the 3 required tablet fragments with minimal conflict. They had avoided the major powerhouses, using Ino's scouting and Shikamaru's predictive intellect to stay one step ahead. Now they were navigating a wide, open plateau, heading towards the final checkpoint. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered, coming to a sudden halt. We've got company. 3 of them up ahead. Choji, munching on a chip, stopped beside him. Strong. Different, Shikamaru said, his brow furrowed in concentration. His observation Haki was sending him a strange signal. 2 of the presences felt sharp, confident, like standard, skilled shinobi. The third, however, was a sleeping volcano. It felt contained, but the sheer scale of the power bubbling just beneath the surface was immense. It was the same kind of feeling he got when he was near Naruto, but where Naruto's felt like an ocean of willpower, this felt like a caged sun. 3 figures appeared on the horizon, walking towards them with a confident swagger. 2 of them, A boy with a lollipop and a girl with striking red hair had swords strapped to their backs. But it was the woman walking between them who drew all of Shikamaru and Choji's attention. She had blonde hair, and her steps were graceful, almost cat-like. It was Team 11 from Kumogakure. Well, what do we have here? Karui said, her voice sharp. Some Konoha slugs, crawling through the rocks. Omoi sighed, twirling his lollipop. Now, Karui, maybe they're just lost. Or maybe they have tablet fragments they'd be willing to share. Or maybe they're planning a complex ambush that will lead to our untimely demise. I'm really starting to regret not packing extra snacks. Yujito Ni, the Jinchuriki of the Two Tails, simply smiled, her dark eyes sizing up the trio from Konoha. Her gaze was that of a predator assessing prey. Shikamaru's mind was already racing. Kumo Shinobi, aggressive, direct, two Kenjutsu users, but the real threat is her. His and Choji's Haki senses were screaming the same thing. The woman in the middle was the danger, the kind of danger that could wipe them all off the map. Chapter 20, Part 3, The Serpent's Scars. Miles away, in the deepest, darkest crevice of the shattered peaks, a tiny white snake slithered out from a crack in the rock. It trembled, not from cold, but from a deep, instinctual terror. It found a secluded spot, hidden from the world, and began to convulse. Its mouth opened, stretching to an unnatural degree. From the maw, a thick, viscous fluid began to pour out, followed by the pale, slime-coated form of a human hand. Slowly, agonizingly, a new body was regurgitated onto the dusty ground. It was the Orochimaru-style body replacement technique, a trump card for surviving even the most complete and utter defeat. Orochimaru lay on the ground, gasping, his new body pristine and free of any physical wounds. The gaping hole torn in the 8 branches serpent and the internal damage from Naruto's Haki emission were gone. He was, for all intents and purposes, fully healed. But the moment he tried to push himself up, a blinding, white-hot pain erupted not from his body, but from his very core. He collapsed back to the ground with a choked cry, his hand flying to clutch his chest as if trying to hold his very soul together. Physically, he was whole. Spiritually, he was shattered. He remembered the final, terrifying moments in that mental plane. He had expected to face the boy's will, perhaps even the Nine-Tails' rage. He had not expected that. In the darkness of his soul, he had been confronted by a towering silhouette. It wasn't the boy. It was a man impossibly tall with a presence that felt absolute, like the ocean itself. He had only one arm, and his gaze was a crushing weight that promised not just defeat, but total annihilation. Who? What was that? Orochimaru thought, a tremor of genuine fear running through him. That wasn't the boy. It was something else, something within him, an old soul, a king. That presence, that will, had torn and frayed his own soul, leaving deep, spiritual lacerations. He felt a profound weakness, a trembling in his essence that he had not experienced since he was a mortal child. That brat! Orochimaru hissed through clenched teeth, his voice a venomous whisper. Uzumaki, Naruto! He cursed the name, the sound echoing with a mixture of hatred and awe for the being he now knew resided within the boy. He forced himself into a sitting position, his breathing ragged. His mind, ever the scientist, began to analyze. That final technique, divine departure, he mused, his golden eyes narrowing. The amount of chakra and that other energy he poured into that single slash was astronomical. Even for an Uzumaki, a blast of that magnitude, followed by that spiritual assault. A slow, cruel smile began to form on his lips, a predator finding a sliver of hope in its own mauling. He must be completely drained. The thought was a balm to his wounded pride. The boy couldn't possibly be in any condition to fight after an expenditure like that. He had unleashed the king within him, but it must have cost him everything. He was likely just as weakened, just as vulnerable as Orochimaru himself. The question then became, what now? His original plan had been to brand Sasuke Uchiha with his cursed seal. But was he in any condition to do so? His spirit ached. He thought about it, weighing the risks and the rewards. The memory of Sasuke's Sharingan, the perfect vessel. The opportunity was right here. And then he thought of the one-armed silhouette again. The king in the darkness. If he made his move on Sasuke and failed, if that monster inside the boy could manifest again. A shiver, an emotion he had long thought himself above, ran down his spine. Fear. No, Orochimaru decided, his hand still trembling slightly. Patience. The fruit is sweetest when it is perfectly ripe. A direct confrontation now is foolish. His plan would have to change. He would not go after Sasuke directly. Not yet. The risk, for the first time in a long time, was too great. That entity within Naruto was an unknown, terrifying variable. He would let the exams continue. He would let the boy recover. He would observe from the shadows, gather more data, and wait. He would wait for a moment of perfect, absolute chaos. A moment when all of Konoha's attention was elsewhere. A moment when he could strike without any chance of the red-haired conqueror interfering. His smile returned, this time filled with a cold, serpentine cunning. Kukuku, you have won this battle, Naruto Uzumaki, he whispered to the empty cavern. But the war for Sasuke-kun's body, and the mystery of that soul you hide, has only just begun. The air on the IWA plateau grew taut, a string stretched to its breaking point. Yujito Ni's predatory smile was the only thing that seemed at ease in the suffocating tension. Shikamaru Nara's mind was a frantic storm of calculations. 3 opponents. Kumanin. Aggressive. 2 are Kenjutsu specialists. The one in the middle. She's the problem. The pressure she gives off is immense. A Jinchuriki, no doubt. A direct fight is suicide. How troublesome, Shikamaru breathed, his classic line now laced with genuine dread. Let's make this quick, Karui stated, her hand gripping the hilt of her katana. Hand over your fragments, and we might let you walk away. Now, Karui, what if they don't have any fragments? Omoi mused, twirling his lollipop. Then we'd be beating them up for no reason, and that would be a waste of energy. Or what if they're a trap, and 1,000 more Konohinin are about to ambush us? That would be really bad. Yujito chuckled, a low, dangerous sound. Omoi, you think too much. It's simple. Her dark eyes locked onto Team 10. We break them. If they have fragments, we take them. If they don't, we've sent a message. She made the first move. With a burst of speed that left an afterimage, she shot forward. Ino, reacting on instinct, threw a spread of kunai. Yujito didn't even break stride. With a flick of her wrist, she unleashed her claw creation technique, her fingernails extending into long, durable talons that effortlessly deflected the projectiles with sharp pings of metal on keratin. Choji, front. Ino, support, Shikamaru commanded, his hands already forming a seal. Choji met Yujito's charge. Partial multi-size technique. His right arm swelled to 5 times its normal size as he swung it in a massive, sweeping blow designed to push Yujito back. But Yujito was unnaturally fast. She dropped low, sliding under the huge arm, and aimed a clawed strike at Choji's exposed torso. Before the claws could connect, Shikamaru's trap sprung. Shadow imitation technique. His shadow shot out, latching onto Yujito's. She froze mid-strike, an inch from Choji's flesh, a snarl twisting her features. Got her, Choji yelled. Don't celebrate yet, Shikamaru grunted, sweat beading on his brow. He could feel the strain. It was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with a rope. Yujito wasn't just resisting. Her raw chakra was actively pushing against his shadow, causing it to tremble. While the cat's in the trap, Karui snarled, drawing her katana. Let's kill the rats, Omoi finished, drawing his own. The 2 Kenjutsu users exploded into motion, charging at Shikamaru and Ino from opposite flanks. I won't let you, Choji roared. He retracted his enlarged arm and spun, putting his body between his friends and the Kumo swordsman. He brought his arms up to block. Karui's powerful frontal slash and Omoi's deceptive faint turned crescent moon slash struck Choji's arms simultaneously. He was sent skidding back several feet, deep cuts opening on his forearms, gritting his teeth in pain. My shadow is slipping, Shikamaru yelled, his fingers trembling from the effort. Her power is too much. Yujito let out a triumphant roar as she flexed, raw power surging through her. The shadow binding snapped with an audible twang. Freed, she immediately launched her counterattack. Mouse hairball. She spat a flaming ball of hair that zipped towards Ino. The projectile split midair into a dozen smaller, flaming mice that screeched as they swarmed her. Ino screamed, dodging and weaving, but one of the fire mice caught her leg, exploding on impact and sending her tumbling to the ground with a cry of pain. "Ino!" Choji yelled, his eyes wide with fury. Seeing his teammate hurt flipped a switch. His kind nature vanished, replaced by the protective rage of the Akimichi. "You'll pay for that." He ignored Omoi and Karui and charged directly at Yujito, his fist swelling. Yujito met his charge with a smirk, her own chakra flaring. Omoi and Karui immediately changed targets, their blades flashing as they raced to intercept the now exposed Shikamaru. "It's over," Shikamaru thought, seeing the two blades converging on him. He had no time to form a seal, no time to dodge. How troublesome. Suddenly, a massive, green-haired figure with 3 swords appeared between Shikamaru and the Kumo swordsman, catching both their blades on his own. He was wearing a dark green haramaki and had a black bandana tied around his head. "Oi," the man said, turning his head to look at them with his one visible eye. "You too. Don't let your captain down. He went through all that trouble to teach you Haki. Now's the time you're supposed to push past your limits, right?" He effortlessly shoved Omoi and Karui back several steps. Shikamaru, Choji, Ino, Yujito, Omoi, and Karui all stared, completely bewildered. "Who the hell are you?" Karui demanded. "Roronoa Zoro," the man said, looking around the vast, rocky plateau. He frowned. "Wait a minute. This isn't the pup." All 6 genin deadpanned. In perfect unison, they all thought, or in some cases yelled, "He's lost again." Zoro shrugged. "Whatever. Looks like you've got this." And with a burst of speed, he vanished, running in a completely random direction. The bizarre interlude was over as quickly as it began, but Zoro's words had struck a chord. "Don't let your captain down." Shikamaru and Choji both thought of Naruto. They thought of his easy confidence, of the power he had shown them, and the trust he had placed in them. "He's right," Choji said, his voice a low growl. He turned to face Omoi and Karui, his fists clenched. "We can't lose here." The battle resumed with a new intensity. Yujito, annoyed by the interruption, decided to end it. Blue, fiery chakra erupted around her, forming a spectral cat-like cloak. The Two-Tails power. She extended her claws and shot towards Choji. Shikamaru's mind went into overdrive. "Her power is too great for my shadow. Choji can't block her claws forever. Ino is injured. I need a new move." His observation Haki flared, not just predicting, but feeling the flow of the entire battle. He saw it, a split-second opening in 3 moves. "Ino now. Mind-body switch on Karui," Shikamaru commanded. "But my body will be," Ino started. "Just do it." Ino, trusting her friend, slumped over as her spirit shot into the charging Karui. Karui's body froze mid-stride, her sword dropping. Omoi, seeing his partner inexplicably stop, hesitated for a crucial second. "Choji, human boulder. Roll at Omoi," Shikamaru yelled. Choji didn't question it. He curled into a ball and shot towards Omoi. Omoi, forced to defend, brought his sword up to block the spinning sphere of destruction. This was the moment. Yujito, seeing both of Choji and Ino's group occupied, saw her prime target completely exposed. Shikamaru. She changed direction, a blur of blue fire, her claws aimed directly at his throat. "I knew you would," Shikamaru whispered, a grim smile on his face. He wasn't looking at Yujito. He was looking at her shadow. He poured every ounce of his will, every bit of the teaching Naruto had given him, into his jutsu. Armament Haki, shadow stitching. His shadow didn't just stretch, it solidified. Multiple sharp, black tendrils, no longer just intangible shadows but hardened spikes of pure willpower, erupted from the ground and stabbed into Yujito's charging form. Yujito cried out in shock and pain. The hardened shadows pierced her chakra cloak, pinning her arms and legs. She struggled, but this time the shadow didn't tremble. It held. It was like being pinned by iron bars. This was Shikamaru's breakthrough, the hardened shadow. But it wouldn't hold for long. The Two-Tails chakra was already beginning to crack the Haki-infused tendrils. "Choji now!" Shikamaru screamed, the strain immense. Choji, having sent Omoi flying, saw his chance. Yujito was pinned. He saw Karui, Ino, slumped to the ground as Ino's spirit returned to her own body. The path was clear. This was it. The Ino Shikacho formation, enhanced. He used the 3 colored pills his father had given him for emergencies. He popped the green one, then the yellow one. Power surged through him. He used his ultimate technique, but with a new twist. Armament Haki. Spiky human bullet tank. He expanded, but as he rolled, he coated his entire body in a shell of black armament Haki. He was no longer just a boulder of flesh. He was a meteor of pure, hardened will. This was Choji's evolution, full body hardening. He shot across the plateau, an unstoppable black cannonball, aimed directly at the pinned Yujito. Yujito saw him coming. With a final, desperate roar, she unleashed a point-blank cat flame roaring fire, a massive fireball of blue flame meant to incinerate him. But the Haki-coated human boulder didn't even slow down. It smashed through the fireball, the flames washing harmlessly over the black shell of Haki, and slammed into her with the force of a mountain. The impact was cataclysmic. A shockwave erupted across the plateau, shattering the rock and sending Omoi and Karui flying. Shikamaru's shadow trap shattered, and he was thrown back. When the dust settled, Yujito was lying in a massive crater, reverted to her human form, unconscious. Choji, back to his normal size, was on his hands and knees, panting, completely exhausted but victorious. The use of the pills and the massive Haki output had taken nearly everything out of him. Ino rushed to his side, her face etched with worry. "Choji, are you okay?" She helped him sit up, checking the deep cuts on his arms from the earlier sword strikes. They were still bleeding, and she knew they'd need proper medical attention soon. Omoi and Karui stood a distance away, their swords held loosely, their faces a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. They had just witnessed a team of Konoha genin defeat a Jinchuriki. Their pride, their village's reputation for overwhelming power, had been shattered by sheer, unbelievable strategy and a sudden, monstrous display of force. Shikamaru staggered to his feet, a weary but triumphant smile on his face. He looked at Choji, then at Ino, who was now wrapping a bandage around Choji's arm. "We did it, Naruto," he thought. "We pushed past our limits." The dust settled, revealing the stark reality of the battlefield. Choji was on the ground, struggling to breathe, with Ino tending to his bloody arms. Shikamaru stood, but he was swaying on his feet, his face pale with exertion. Across the crater, Yujito lay motionless, a testament to the unbelievable power Konoha's chubby one had just unleashed. Karui's hands trembled, not with fear, but with pure, unadulterated rage. Her amber eyes were fixed on the victorious but broken Team 10. They beat Yujito, she seethed, her knuckles white around the hilt of her katana. "That fatso, that shadow freak, I'll kill them." She took a step forward, her intent clear. They were weak, finished. One more push was all it would take. "Karui, wait." Omoi's voice was quiet but firm. He put a hand on her shoulder, stopping her advance. "Get out of my way, Omoi," she snarled, trying to shrug him off. "They're finished. We can still win this." "And then what?" Omoi asked, his dark eyes serious, his usual pessimistic overthinking now replaced by sharp, tactical clarity. He gestured towards the crater. "Think it through, Karui." He began to break it down, his voice low and rapid. "Yujito is down. She's a Jinchuriki. That means she's the top priority. If we continue this fight and one of them gets a lucky shot on us, or if another team shows up while we're fighting, who protects her? Who gets her out of here?" He then pointed at the exhausted Team 10. "Look at them. The big one is completely incapacitated. The girl is injured. The strategist is running on fumes. They beat us, yes, but it cost them everything. They are no longer a threat to us." He paused, his gaze becoming distant as he replayed the fight in his mind. "Their strategy, it was perfect. They used our aggression against us. The girl's jutsu to freeze you, forcing my hesitation. It was all a setup. A trap to pin Yujito for that final attack." He shook his head, a look of grudging respect on his face. "This wasn't just a brawl. They outthought us from the very beginning. If we attack them now, blindly, with rage, we're just proving that they were right about us. We'd be falling into the same trap of underestimation that led to this." Karui's anger was still simmering, but Omoi's logic was undeniable. Her shoulders slumped slightly. He was right. Their mission's priority had shifted from winning the exam to protecting their teammate. "So what do we do?" she asked, her voice laced with frustration. "We withdraw," Omoi said, his decision made. "We secure Yujito and then we recover." He looked over at Team 10-1 last time, his expression unreadable. "And we report back. We tell them that the shinobi from Konoha are not to be taken lightly." He walked over to the crater and carefully lifted Yujito onto his shoulder, a grim expression on his face. "Let's go, Karui." Karui shot a final, hateful glare at Shikamaru, but she sheathed her katana and followed her teammate. She had lost and she hated it, but Omoi was right. There was no honor in attacking a half-dead foe when their own leader was down. As the two Kumanin disappeared over the rocky horizon, Shikamaru finally allowed his knees to buckle, slumping to the ground. "Man," he breathed, a weary grin on his face. How troublesome. They had survived, and they had won. Chapter 21, Part 3, The Kindness of a Snake. The dust settled, and the silence that fell upon the plateau was heavier than any rock. Omoi and Karui disappeared over the horizon, their defeated forms carrying their unconscious Jinchuriki leader, a sight that would have been unthinkable just minutes ago. The victory was absolute, but the cost was devastating. Shikamaru finally allowed his knees to buckle, slumping to the ground. The adrenaline that had fueled his Haki-infused strategy vanished, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. "Man," he breathed, a weary, pained grin on his face. "How troublesome." "Choji." Ino's voice was sharp with panic. Shikamaru's head snapped up. Choji was on the ground, his body no longer the robust form of an Akimichi, but frighteningly gaunt. The three-colored pills had done their work, converting his body fat into the immense power needed for his final attack, and now the price was coming due. His skin was pale, his breathing was shallow and ragged, and a cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He's burning up, but his skin is so cold," Ino said, her hands hovering over him, unsure of what to do. The cuts on his arms were still bleeding sluggishly. Her knowledge of flowers and poisons was useless here. This was a self-inflicted, systematic breakdown. "The pills," Shikamaru whispered, his blood running cold as he remembered the dire warnings from Asuma-sensei. The red chili pepper pill was a death sentence. Choji hadn't taken that one, but the yellow, it was still life-threatening. They were in the middle of enemy territory, miles from any help, and their powerhouse was dying. "We have to get him back to the outpost," Shikamaru said, trying to force himself to his feet, but his own depleted reserves made the world spin. "He won't make it," Ino said, tears welling in her eyes. "Look at him, Shika. He's fading." It was in that moment of absolute desperation that they heard it, the soft crunch of footsteps on gravel. Shikamaru and Ino instantly tensed, whatever little chakra they had left flaring in a pathetic attempt at a defensive posture. "Easy there," a calm, reassuring voice called out. "We're not enemies." Three figures emerged from behind a rock formation. They all wore Konoha headbands. The one in the lead, a silver-haired young man with glasses, held his hands up in a placating gesture. It was Kabuto Yakushi and his team. "We saw the explosions from a distance and came to investigate," Kabuto said, his eyes quickly assessing the scene, the massive crater, the unconscious Jinchuriki being carried away, and the catastrophic state of Team 10. His gaze settled on Choji, and his expression, masked by concern, held a flicker of something else, a cold, analytical curiosity. "What happened to him?" Kabuto asked, kneeling beside Choji without waiting for an invitation. His teammates, Yoroi and Misumi, stood back, looking wary. "It was the Akimichi clan's secret pills," Shikamaru grunted, forcing himself to stay focused. His observation Haki was screaming at him, but not with a sense of overt danger. It was a strange, disquieting feeling, an aura of insincerity coming from the silver-haired boy, but Shikamaru's mind was too clouded by exhaustion and worry to properly analyze it. Kabuto's fingers gently touched Choji's neck, checking his pulse. He then lifted one of Choji's eyelids. "Ah, I see. Calorie-to-chakra conversion on a massive scale, followed by systemic cellular breakdown. He's in cardiac arrest and his chakra network is collapsing. He has minutes at best." Ino let out a choked sob. "This is beyond standard first aid," Kabuto said, his tone serious and professional. But I might be able to stabilize him. I was a medic's apprentice for a time. It's risky, and I'll need to work fast. Before Shikamaru could even respond, Kabuto's attention shifted to Ino. But first, let's take care of that burn. An infected wound can be just as deadly out here. May I? Ino, caught off guard by the concern for her own less critical injury, simply nodded. Kabuto's hand glowed with a soft green light, and he gently placed it over the burn on her leg. The searing pain instantly subsided into a cool, tingling sensation. She watched in amazement as the angry red skin began to calm, the blistering receding. The healing was fast, efficient, and far more potent than what she'd seen from academy instructors. Your chakra control is amazing, she said, genuinely impressed. Years of practice, Kabuto replied with a humble smile, his eyes briefly glancing at the way her chakra flowed. Yamanaka clan, mind-based techniques, high chakra control but low physical reserves. Interesting. He finished the basic treatment, leaving the wound properly cleaned and sealed. That should prevent infection. Now for the main event. Shikamaru's mind, even in its exhausted state, registered the move. It was a classic manipulation tactic. Offer a small, genuine act of kindness to build trust before the larger request. It was working. Ino's posture had relaxed slightly, her gratitude making her less wary. Do it, Shikamaru said, his voice firm, seeing no other option despite the nagging feeling in his gut. Kabuto nodded. Misumi, Yoroi, keep watch. Ino-san, I'll need you to hold his head steady. He opened his medical pouch, his movements swift and precise. He produced a syringe and a small vial of a strange green liquid. This is a soldier pill derivative I created, Kabuto explained calmly as he filled the syringe. It won't heal him, but it should force his heart to keep beating and temporarily reinforce his chakra coils to stop them from shattering. It's a stopgap, nothing more. As he moved to inject the fluid into Choji's arm, his other hand, hidden from Shikamaru and Ino's view, subtly scraped a small patch of skin and blood from one of Choji's wounds onto a hidden slide in his palm. Akimichi DNA from a subject capable of using that other power. Lord Orochimaru will be pleased. He administered the injection. Then, his hands began to glow with the green light of the mystical palm technique, but his application was far more advanced than anything Ino had ever seen. He wasn't just healing the surface wounds. His chakra was sinking deep into Choji's body, targeting specific pressure points and organs. I'm manually stimulating his tenketsu, Kabuto explained, sweat beading on his own brow from the concentration, forcing his network to stabilize. It's a brutal method, but it's all I can do out here. Slowly, miraculously, the shallow, ragged gasps from Choji began to even out. The deathly pallor of his skin was replaced by a flush of color. He was still unconscious, still gravely injured, but the immediate, life-threatening danger seemed to have passed. Ino stared, a mixture of awe and immense gratitude on her face. You saved him. Kabuto sat back, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand, breathing heavily as if he had just finished his own battle. He put on a weary but kind smile. For now, he needs to get to a real medical facility as soon as possible. He's not out of the woods yet. Shikamaru watched him, the suspicion in his gut warring with the undeniable relief flooding his system. This medic was good. Too good for a genin. But he had just saved Choji's life. A debt had been formed. We owe you, Shikamaru said, his voice heavy. My name is Shikamaru Nara. This is Ino Yamanaka, and that's Choji Akimichi. Kabuto Yakushi, he replied, offering a friendly smile. Don't worry about it. We're all Konoha shinobi here. We have to look out for each other. As he packed his medical kit, his finger brushed against a small, almost invisible sealing tag he had prepared. While healing Choji's back, where no one was looking, he had subtly pressed the tag against Choji's skin, where it dissolved, leaving behind a minuscule chakra signature. A tracking marker and listening device for Orochimaru. Data collection is paramount. Your team must be incredibly strong to have survived a fight that left you in this state, Kabuto said conversationally, trying to fish for information. Shikamaru's guard was back up. It was troublesome, he said, offering no details. Kabuto simply chuckled. I'm sure it was. Well, we should get moving. You need to get your friend to the outpost. Good luck. With a final, friendly wave, Team Kabuto disappeared into the rocks, leaving Team 10 alone once more. Ino looked down at the now stable Choji, then back at Shikamaru. We were lucky he showed up. Shikamaru nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the spot where Kabuto had vanished. Yeah, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Lucky. But as he looked at his best friend, alive because of a stranger's intervention, a cold, logical part of his brain told him that luck, in the world of Shinobi, rarely came without a price. Deep within the stone heart of Iwagakure, the Tsuchikige's office was a place of heavy silence. Anoki, the third Tsuchikige, floated cross-legged behind his desk, his old, wrinkled face a mask of deep contemplation. The reports from the first phase of the Chunin exams were spread before him, but his mind was on a single red-haired variable. He stared out of the large window, his gaze fixed on the distant, jagged peaks where the second phase was underway. The door slid open, and his son, Kitsuchi, entered. Father, Kitsuchi began, his voice a low rumble. The reports from the shattered peaks are chaotic. Kuratsuchi's team initiated contact with the Uzumaki boy. Anoki didn't turn, and his voice was raspy, like grinding stones. They were defeated. Utterly, Kitsuchi stated bluntly. According to the observers, the boy possesses a power they couldn't comprehend. He altered the landscape with a single swing of his sword. Anoki remained silent for a long moment. He had expected this, feared it even. The chill he felt whenever he thought of the boy was not a figment of his old age. It was a premonition. I warned you, father, Kitsuchi said, the frustration he had suppressed for years finally seeping into his tone. I told you that targeting the son of the Yellow Flash, a Jinchuriki of Uzumaki blood, was a foolish risk. I told you that creating a grudge with a boy like that would only breed a monster. Now that monster has come knocking on our door, and you've invited him in for tea. Finally, Anoki turned, his piercing eyes fixing on his son. A monster? Yes, but a monster we created. A problem of our own making. And problems of IWA are solved by IWA. Kitsuchi shot back, his voice rising. She could have been killed. Don't be a fool, son, Anoki scoffed, a flicker of his infamous arrogance returning. I don't think the brat is the kind to blame others for their family's sins. He floated from behind his desk, moving closer to the window, his back to his son once again. They, Akatsuki, said I couldn't kill him. Anoki mused, a dark, chilling tone entering his voice. They said nothing about his limbs. They said nothing about his spirit. They said nothing about breaking his bones and leaving him a crippled, shattered wreck who will never hold a sword again. Kitsuchi stared at his father's back, horrified. You can't be serious. After what happened to him, to his arm, you would seek to maim him further. That isn't justice. It's cruelty. It's beneath the dignity of a Kage. Dignity? Anoki spat, spinning around to face him, his eyes blazing with the fire of a man whose pride had been wounded. That boy is a walking, breathing insult to this village. His very existence is a threat to the balance of power I have spent my entire life maintaining. His father humiliated us in the last war, and now the son arrives with a power that defies all logic. He must be made an example of. He raised a gnarled, trembling finger. I will not kill him, but I will break him. I will shatter his pride, cripple his body, and show the world what happens to those who dare to challenge the will of Iwagakure. I will put him in a state where the Akatsuki can have their vessel, and I can have my peace. Anoki's eyes gleamed with a cold, ruthless light. The inevitable clash between him and Naruto Uzumaki would not be a sanctioned match in the exams. It would be a punishment, a brutal, personal, and crippling execution of pride, delivered by the Tsuchikage himself. Chapter 22. The Race Against Time. The trek through the shattered peaks was a brutal ordeal for Team 10. Shikamaru bore the brunt of Choji's weight, his arm draped over his shoulder, while Ino, wincing with every step on her burned leg, supported Choji's other side. The drastic weight loss Choji had suffered from the 3 colored pills made him lighter than usual, but to 2 exhausted genin running on fumes, he felt like a mountain of lead. They navigated a narrow, winding ravine, the high walls casting long, oppressive shadows. Shikamaru's breathing was ragged. He wasn't using his brain to strategize anymore. He was using it solely to force one foot in front of the other. We're almost through, Shikamaru wheezed, spotting a widening in the canyon ahead. They stumbled out of the ravine and stopped dead. The landscape before them had been fundamentally rewritten. What should have been a dry, rocky plateau was now a vast, murky lake, the water rippling gently against debris that looked like pulverized cliff faces. Massive gouges scarred the surrounding rock walls, and the air still carried the faint, sharp scent of blood and unnatural chill. What in the world? Ino breathed, momentarily forgetting her pain. Did a tailed beast get loose here? Careful, Shikamaru warned, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the destruction. Even in his exhausted state, his instincts were sharp. In the center of the artificial lake, standing on the water surface were two figures. One was a tall, lanky boy nervously clutching a bandaged sword. The other was a slender figure with long hair, poised with a grace that set Shikamaru's nerves on edge. Between them, floating peacefully on his back in the water, lay Naruto. Shikamaru's eyes widened in recognition. The boy with the sword, I don't know him, but the other one, from the land of waves. Halt! Haku's voice carried across the water, calm but laced with a clear warning. She didn't raise a weapon, but her stance shifted imperceptibly, ready to intercept. Chojuro tightened his grip on Hiramakari. We're allies, Shikamaru called out, his voice hoarse. He adjusted his grip on Choji. We're Naruto's teammates. Team 10. Haku's gaze swept over them, noting the leaf headbands and their battered state. She relaxed slightly. You may approach. Shikamaru and Ino dragged Choji to the water's edge. What happened here? Shikamaru asked, gesturing to the devastation. Is he okay? He is resting, Haku said softly, looking down at the sleeping redhead with profound respect. The battle was beyond words. Who did he fight? Ino asked, looking at the sheer scale of the damage. This doesn't look like a genin exam fight. It began with my comrades, Haku explained. They wished to test his strength. He humbled them. Her expression then darkened, a shadow passing over her face. And then, he came, Orochimaru of the Sannin. Shikamaru felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The Sannin? Here? Naruto fought a Sannin? And drove him away, Chojuro added, his voice trembling with awe. He was incredible. At the sound of voices, the water around Naruto stirred. He groaned low in his throat, stretching his single arm out before splashing water onto his face. He blinked open his eyes, groggy and disoriented for a split second before his gaze sharpened. Man, best nap I've had in ages, he mumbled, sitting up on the water. He shook his wet red hair like a dog. Hey Haku, how long was I? He froze, his eyes locked onto the trio at the shore. He took in Shikamaru's pale, swaying form, Ino's burns, and finally, the gaunt, unconscious figure of Choji. In a blur of motion that displaced no water, Naruto vanished from the center of the lake and appeared directly in front of them. The lazy demeanor was gone instantly, replaced by intense, focused concern. What happened? Naruto demanded, his hand hovering over Choji's chest as if checking for a heartbeat. His observation Haki flared, scanning his friend. His life force, it's weak, stable but hanging by a thread. His chakra network is a mess. We ran into a Kumo team, Shikamaru rasped, leaning heavily against a rock. A Jinchuriki. We won, but Choji used his clan's pills. Naruto grimaced. He knew enough about the Akimichi clan to know the toll those pills took. He's in bad shape. This isn't just exhaustion. His system is shutting down. A passing Konoha medic helped us, Ino added, her voice trembling. Kabuto stabilized him, said it was a temporary fix. We need to get him to the tower. Naruto nodded, absorbing the information. He didn't ask about the medic. It didn't matter who it was right now. All that mattered was that the fix was temporary and Choji was dying. Okay, Naruto said, his voice dropping into a tone of absolute command. We're not walking, we're rushing this. He stood up and turned to the Kiri Shinobi. Haku, Chojuro, you're with me now. We finish this exam together. Haku bowed her head. We follow your lead, Naruto-kun. Right, Naruto said, his mind racing through the logistics. He pulled out his map fragment and demanded Shikamaru's. He placed them together on a flat rock. Haku, Naruto ordered. You're the fastest. My teammates and your comrades, they're about 3 miles northeast, holding position in a small ravine. Go get them. Tell them to haul ass to the central tower. Understood, Haku said. She didn't ask how he knew exactly where they were. She simply vanished in a swirl of leaves and ice. Naruto looked at Chojuro. You and I are going to get the last tablet fragment. He closed his eyes for a second, his sensory range expanding. There's an IWA patrol near it. We'll need to hit them hard and fast. He then formed a cross seal with his one hand. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 2 solid clones popped into existence. They immediately moved to Choji's sides. You too, Naruto ordered his clones. Carry Choji. Support Shikamaru and Ino. Run straight for the tower. Do not stop for anything. If you encounter enemies, prioritize escape. On it, boss, the clones said in unison. They gently lifted the unconscious Akimichi, taking the weight off the exhausted Shikamaru and Ino. Naruto, Shikamaru said. Are you sure? You just fought a Sannin. I've got enough left in the tank for this, Naruto said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. His focus was entirely on the mission. Choji put his life on the line. I'm not going to let him lose it because we were too slow. He looked at Chojuro. Let's move. The next hour was a blur of high-speed travel. Naruto and Chojuro descended upon the western peak like a storm. The IWA team guarding the fragment didn't stand a chance. Chojuro, emboldened by Naruto's presence, used Hiramakari to shatter their defenses, while Naruto used a precise burst of wind-infused swordplay to disarm and incapacitate them. They secured the tablet in under 2 minutes. Meanwhile, Haku had rallied Sasuke, Sakura, and the recovering Kiri team too. The group moved in a unified phalanx, cutting through the terrain with desperate speed. Sasuke, still frustrated by his lack of impact against the Kiri trio, channeled his anger into speed, pushing the pace. The groups converged at the base of the massive stone spire that served as the central outpost. Naruto arrived first, waiting at the entrance. As he saw his clones arrive with Choji, followed moments later by Haku and the rest of the massive coalition, he let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Everyone inside. Now! They burst through the doors of the tower. The proctors inside, stunned by the sudden arrival of nearly 20 genin from 2 different villages moving as a single unit, barely had time to react. We cleared the fragments, Naruto yelled, slamming the map pieces and tablets onto the counter. Medical team, we have a critical injury. Akimichi clan pills. The urgency in his voice spurred the IWA medics into action. They rushed forward with a stretcher, taking Choji from the clones. Ino collapsed onto a bench, sobbing with relief. Shikamaru slid down the wall, his eyes closing. They had made it. Good work, Naruto said quietly, placing a hand on Shikamaru's shoulder. You too, Shikamaru murmured. Troublesome, but thanks. As the chaos of the medical team moving Choji away settled, a calm voice spoke up from the side of the room. I'm glad to see you made it in time. I was worried the stabilization wouldn't hold. Naruto turned. Standing near a pillar, looking fresh and composed, was a team of Konoha genin. The speaker was a young man with silver hair and round glasses, pushing them up the bridge of his nose with a friendly smile. Shikamaru's eyes snapped open. Kabuto, he said, nodding respectfully. We owe you one. Seriously. Ino looked up, wiping her eyes. Thank you. Thank you for saving him. Naruto froze. His observation Haki, now that the immediate crisis of Choji was handed off, focused entirely on the speaker. He felt it instantly, that specific, cold, reptilian curiosity. The greed, the underlying, hidden malice that felt like a snake coiled in the grass. It was the exact same aura he had felt watching him from the cliffs. The same aura that was connected to the girl who had turned into Orochimaru. Naruto's eyes narrowed into slits. He looked at the friendly, smiling face of the medic who had saved his friend. You, Naruto thought, a cold rage beginning to simmer in his gut. He didn't say a word. He just stared, memorizing the face, the chakra signature, and the feeling of the soul beneath. The puzzle pieces slammed together. The spy on the cliff. The attack by Orochimaru. the convenient rescue of Choji. It wasn't luck. It was a web, and Kabuto Yakushi was sitting right in the center of it. Team 8 moved with the quiet confidence of a perfectly oiled machine. They had secured their first 2 tablet fragments with flawless stealth, their combined sensory network making them ghosts in the war zone of the second phase. Now, they were closing in on the final checkpoint. Checkpoint is at the center of the basin, Hinata reported, her Byakugan scanning the area from a high ridge. I see the tablet. There's another team already there. What are they doing? Kiba asked, sniffing the air. I smell blood and something weird, like a wild animal. They are not moving, Shino observed, sending a few scout insects ahead. They have already acquired the tablet, yet they are waiting. Why? Because they are not gathering. They are hunting. Hinata's eyes narrowed, focusing on the trio in the basin below. One was a calm-looking girl with green hair, another a hooded figure who seemed to blend with the shadows. But it was the one in the center who drew all of her attention. He was sitting cross-legged on a rock, leaning forward with his chin resting on a black staff, radiating an aura of supreme, almost lazy confidence. He had wild, spiky hair and a grin that was all sharp teeth. His chakra, Hinata whispered, a note of disbelief in her voice. It's quiet, too quiet for how powerful he feels. It was a paradox her Byakugan couldn't immediately solve. The boy's chakra coils were calm, yet the sheer presence he gave off was immense, a physical pressure that was almost visible. Suddenly, the boy's head snapped up, his golden-brown eyes locking directly onto their concealed position a kilometer away. Hinata gasped and stumbled back. He had seen her. No, not seen her, he had felt her looking. Looks like we've got company. Enzo's voice boomed across the basin, impossibly loud and clear. He stood up, stretching his arms with a series of loud cracks. Finally, I was getting bored. Enzo, wait. The girl, Shizuka, cautioned. Let's assess them first. Assess what? They're here, we're here, there's a tablet, Enzo said with a feral grin, pointing his staff at the ridge. Seems pretty simple to me. Team 8's cover was blown. Troublesome, Kiba muttered, stealing Shikamaru's line. So much for the quiet approach. His senses are unnatural, Shino stated, recalling his scout insects. They did not detect me, but he detected Hinata. His perception is not based on chakra. This is a problem. Before they could formulate a plan, Enzo moved. He crouched low, then exploded upwards, not in a chakra-fueled leap, but a pure, physical launch. He cleared the several hundred meters to their ridgetop in a single, soaring arc, landing before them with a ground-shaking thud that cracked the stone beneath his feet. Hi there, he said, his grin widening. I'm Enzo Sarutobi. You guys look strong. Let's fight. Kiba, never one to back down from a direct challenge, snarled. You got a death wish, pal? He and Akamaru crouched, ready to launch a Fong over Fong. Enzo just chuckled. He didn't move, but the air around him grew heavy, thick with a wild, untamed pressure. It was Conqueror's Haki, raw and unfiltered. Kiba and Akamaru froze mid-lunge, their instincts screaming at them, their bodies suddenly refusing to obey. It was the primal fear of a wolf facing a dragon. Kiba-kun, Hinata cried out, seeing him falter. This pressure. Shino breathed, his insects buzzing erratically within his jacket, agitated by the immense spiritual force. It's like Naruto's, but more chaotic, wilder. Enzo tilted his head. Oh, you felt this before? Good. That means you know what you're dealing with. He decided to test them. He swung his black staff in a lazy arc. Kiba, shaking off the paralysis, moved to block, but the staff extended mid-swing, growing several feet in an instant. It wasn't a block Kiba was facing anymore. It was a battering ram. The staff slammed into his chest, sending him and Akamaru flying, crashing into a rock wall 50 meters away. One down, Enzo said cheerfully. Hinata and Shino immediately moved to flank him. Hinata shot forward, her movements a blur of the gentle fist style. 8 trigrams, 32 palms. She aimed to shut down his chakra network. Enzo met her precise, delicate strikes with a chaotic flurry of his own. The way of the Monkey King, who a punch, who a kick. His movements were bizarre, unpredictable. He would block a palm strike with his elbow, then drop to the ground and sweep her legs, then launch himself off his hands into a spinning kick. Her refined style was being met with pure, untamed chaos. His hyper-instinct, observation Haki, allowed him to feel the intent behind her strikes, reacting before her fingers could even reach his tenketsu points. While he was occupied, Shino struck. Secret technique, insect sphere. A massive swarm of his Kikeichu erupted from the ground, aiming to engulf the distracted Enzo. "Got you," Shino said, his voice flat. But Enzo just laughed. He stomped his foot, and his primal aura, Conqueror's Haki, exploded outwards in a visible, golden shockwave. The swarm of insects was blasted back, their flight patterns thrown into chaos by the sheer force of his will. "Bugs? That's your best shot," Enzo mocked. Down in the basin, Shizuka sighed. "He's toying with them." Hey-8, the hooded shinobi, simply nodded. "He's testing their resolve." Back on the ridge, Kiba was rejoining the fight, blood trickling from his lip, his eyes blazing with fury. "You're gonna pay for that." He and Akamaru became a spinning vortex. Tunneling Fong. Enzo met the attack head-on. He slammed the butt of his adamantine staff into the ground, and his arms took on a rugged, stone-like texture. Adamantine skin. He caught the spinning Kiba with one hardened arm, the impact creating a deafening boom. Kiba's fangs scraped harmlessly against the Haki-infused defense. Enzo then grinned and threw Kiba straight at Shino, disrupting his attempt to reform his swarm. This was a complete rout. Enzo wasn't just stronger. He was toying with them, dismantling their teamwork with pure, overwhelming power and unpredictable movement. Hinata, seeing her teammates thrown around, felt a surge of desperation. They couldn't win. This boy, he was a monster on Naruto's level. But they couldn't just run. They were shinobi of Konoha. She had to do something. Shino, likewise, came to a grim conclusion. His standard insects were useless. The physical ones were too weak, and the Haki blast had proven that. He needed something more. Something that could withstand that monstrous will. The Wild King hidden in the grass. Village affiliation. Kusagakyur, hidden grass. Clan. Sarutobi, the Congo or Lost Branch. Rank. Genin, officially. /S rank threat, in reality. Age 16. Chakra natures Earth, Fire, Yang. The mystery of the grass Sarutobi. Why is a Sarutobi in Kusagakyur? Enzo comes from a splinter faction of the Sarutobi clan that left Konoha decades ago. This faction, known as the Congo branch, believed that the Sarutobi clan was becoming too domesticated and bureaucratic within the village system. They believed the true power of their clan lay in their primal connection to the monkey-summoning families. They exiled themselves to the dense, dangerous jungles bordering the land of fire and the land of grass to live as warrior monks and cultivate a deeper, more feral connection with nature. Over generations, the hidden grass village, Kusagakyur, known for its opportunistic nature, formed a pact with this lost branch. The grass village provides them with territory and autonomy. In exchange, the Congo branch acts as the village's ultimate hidden muscle, protecting them from major threats while staying out of standard ninja politics. Enzo is the prodigy of this generation. He is a descendant of the Monkey King Enma. He is not loyal to the politics of grass, but he fights for them because they allow him to be free. Personality. The bored apex predator. Enzo operates on instinct. He finds the rigid rules of the shinobi world tedious and boring. He craves stimulation and respects only one thing: unbreakable will. He is fiercely loyal to his teammates, Shizuka and Hey-8, viewing them as his troop. He has no animosity toward Konoha, but he looks down on most shinobi as sheep who rely too much on hand signs and tricks. He is hedonistic about battle. He doesn't fight to kill, he fights to feel alive. Abilities, the way of the Monkey King. Enzo does not use traditional ninjutsu. His chakra control is actually quite poor for fine manipulation. Instead, he uses a unique power system derived from his heritage. 1. Primal Aura Haki. Enzo possesses an innate form of Haki, though he calls it his aura or will. Conqueror's Haki, primal roar unlike Naruto's oceanic pressure. Enzo's is wild and chaotic, like a natural disaster. It induces primal fear in his enemies. Armament Haki, adamantine skin, he instinctively hardens his body, giving his skin the texture and durability of solid rock or iron. Observation Haki, hyperinstinct, he doesn't see the future. He feels intent. His body reacts to danger reflexively, making him impossibly agile. 2. Serojutsu, Monkey King Arts. Primal Clone. Adamantine Staff. Enzo channels his vitality to create a single, semi-sentient clone that transforms into a legendary, indestructible black staff. He can summon and dismiss it instantly, making him impossible to disarm. Hierarchiok, Way of the Monkey King, a lost martial art designed for the anatomy of monkeys. It focuses on rotational force, unpredictable acrobatics, and strikes that ignore conventional defense. Relationship with Enma. The Monkey King Enma is aware of Enzo's bloodline but has not interacted with them in decades. Enma feels a phantom sensation whenever Enzo uses the adamantine staff transformation, recognizing it as a technique that shouldn't be possible for a human. Enzo is essentially a human who is slowly becoming a monkey sage through evolution rather than jutsu. Author's note on power scaling. Enzo is designed to be a physical peer to Naruto. While Naruto relies on the refined power of a Yonko, Shanks, Enzo relies on the raw, untamed power of the Monkey King. Naruto equals the Emperor, control, leadership, sword. Enzo equals the beast, chaos, instinct, staff. Their clash in the exams represents order versus chaos. Chapter 23, Part 2, Will of the Aburame. The situation was dire. Kiba was bruised and battered, his ferocious attacks rendered useless against Enzo's hardened defense. Hinata, for all her precision with the gentle fist, couldn't land a decisive blow on the chaotic, ever-moving target. And Shino felt a profound sense of failure. His clan's techniques, his life's work, had been scattered by a single invisible roar. "Is that all?" Enzo asked, a hint of genuine disappointment in his voice. He had effortlessly tossed Kiba aside and parried another of Hinata's palm strikes. "I thought you guys were strong. This is just boring." That word, boring, struck a nerve in Shino. He was an Aburame. His clan was the logical, calculating heart of Konoha's intelligence and infiltration. They were not boring. They were precise. They were inevitable. He had been trying to use his insects as a simple swarm, a tool he had always used. But this opponent wasn't a normal shinobi. He was a force of nature like Naruto, and against a force of nature, a simple tool would always break. The logic was flawed, Shino realized. Naruto-kun's advice, improve through combat. I have not been fighting. I have been reacting. That must change. He saw Kiba charge in again, only to be sent flying by a powerful kick from Enzo's Hua kick. He saw Hinata forced onto the defensive. He had to act. Shino did something none of his teammates had ever seen him do. He charged. He moved in a low, grounded stance, forgoing any overt ninjutsu. Enzo, surprised by the bug user's sudden aggression, met him with a playful jab. Shino didn't try to block. Instead, he twisted his body, letting the punch graze his shoulder as he drove his own palm forward. It wasn't a gentle fist strike. It was a simple, brutal palm heel strike aimed at Enzo's chest. It was enhanced. As his hand shot forward, a thin, barely visible layer of his Kikaichu insects swarmed over his arm, and for a split second, they glowed with a faint, dark energy. Armament Haki. Enzo's eyes widened in surprise as he felt a solid, unexpected impact. He was pushed back half a step. It wasn't a powerful blow, but it was a solid one. "Oh," Enzo said, his interest piqued. "The bug boy has some bite." This was Shino's first evolution, integrated taijutsu. He had been observing, learning. He was using his insects not just as projectiles, but as a flexible, Haki-infused gauntlet, turning his own body into a weapon. "You are not the only one with a strong will," Shino stated, his voice flat but carrying a new weight. He began to exude a quiet, intense pressure. It was nothing like Enzo's or Naruto's overwhelming aura, but it was there, a focused, unyielding resolve. He didn't give Enzo time to recover. He moved again, his taijutsu still clumsy compared to a true master, but brutally effective. He would feint a punch, then release a localized swarm of Haki-infused insects from his sleeve, a point-blank shotgun blast of hardened bugs. Enzo was forced to take this seriously. He parried a bug blast with his staff, then spun to deliver a fading kick to trip Shino. But Shino's senses were on fire. This was his second evolution, focused observation. He wasn't trying to sense the whole battlefield anymore. He was focusing every ounce of his will on his single opponent, his insects creating a microscopic sensory field around Enzo. He felt the shift in air pressure, the intent behind the sweep. Instead of being tripped, Shino leapt over the kick, and while airborne, he commanded his insects. This was his third evolution, improvised offensive techniques. Insect art, piercing drill, he commanded. A portion of his swarm converged in front of his fist, spinning at an incredible speed. He then coated the entire spinning drill of insects with a layer of armament Haki. It was a makeshift Rasengan, a spinning mass of hardened, chakra-draining death. Enzo's playful grin vanished, replaced by a look of genuine excitement. Now that's what I'm talking about. He met the insect drill with his own adamantine staff, also coated in his adamantine skin. The two Haki-infused attacks met with a deafening screech of grinding energy. The staff held, but the force of the impact sent a tremor up Enzo's arm. Shino landed, then immediately created his next attack on the fly. Insect art, hardened shield. A dense swarm of his bugs formed a large, round shield on his left arm, which he hardened with armament Haki. He was creating tools from his will. The battle became a true duel. Enzo attacked with his wild, chaotic Monkey King style, his staff a blur of black. Shino met him head-on, his movements still rigid but now brutally effective. He would block a staff strike with his hardened shield, the impact sending insects scattering, then counter with a jab from his piercing drill. He was using Haki not just as a coating, but as the very glue holding his new techniques together. "You're amazing, Bug Boy. Truly amazing," Enzo roared with laughter, his fighting spirit fully ignited. "But it's time to end this." He leapt back, creating distance. He held out his hand, palm open. Ultimate secret art, Monkey Claw. 5 massive blades of golden red Haki shot towards Shino. They were impossibly fast, impossibly powerful. Shino knew he couldn't block it. His shield would be torn apart. In that final moment, he didn't retreat. He stood his ground and unleashed every insect he had, pouring the last of his will and chakra into them. Secret technique, final swarm, adamantine wall. His entire swarm converged in front of him, forming a massive, thick, writhing wall of black. He infused it with every last drop of his armament Haki, his final, ultimate defense. The monkey claw hit the wall. The sound was like a mountain breaking. The Haki-infused blades tore through the outer layers of the swarm, incinerating thousands of insects. But the wall was too dense, its will too focused. It held, but only for a second. The wall exploded, the remaining insects sent flying, and Shino was blasted backwards, his chakra and Haki completely depleted. He crashed to the ground, battered and unconscious. The battle was over. Enzo stood panting, a wide, genuine grin on his face. He looked at the unconscious Shino, then at the terrified but defiant Kiba and Hinata, who were now standing over their fallen friend. "He lost," Enzo said, his voice filled not with mockery, but with profound respect. "But he didn't break." He rested his adamantine staff on his shoulder. "Your friend, he has the will of a king. A quiet one, but a king nonetheless." He turned and looked down into the basin at his own teammates, who were watching in stunned silence. "We're done here," Enzo called out. "Let them pass." Shizuka nodded, a small smile on her face. Hayate gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. Enzo turned back to Kiba and Hinata. "Take care of him. He's a true warrior." With a final look of respect, he leapt from the ridge, landing effortlessly in the basin below, leaving a defeated but forever changed Team 8 in his wake. Shino had lost the battle, but in doing so, he had unlocked a new realm of power and earned the respect of a monster. The central tower of Iwagakure was a fortress of stone, its high ceilings lost in shadow and its air thick with the smell of old dust and dried blood. It was meant to be a sanctuary for those who cleared the second phase, but as the teams trickled in, it felt more like a cage where apex predators were being forced to pace in close proximity. Naruto leaned against a cold stone pillar, his single arm crossed over his chest. To the casual observer, he looked relaxed, his eyes half closed as if he were dozing off again. But beneath the facade, His observation Haki was a taut wire, vibrating with every movement in the hall. His focus was pinned on a specific chakra signature across the room. Kabuto Yakushi moved among the gathered genin with the practiced ease of a helpful senior. He offered water to a panting Kumo team, checked the bandages of a sand genin, and adjusted his glasses with a friendly smile. To the world, he was a saint. To Naruto, he felt like sludge. You saved Choji, Naruto thought, watching the silver-haired medic laugh softly at a joke. For that, you get to breathe today. But I see you. I feel that cold greed underneath your skin. You're not a medic. You're a scout for a serpent. Naruto's senses tracked Kabuto's subtle glances toward Sasuke, who was brooding in a dark corner, and toward the injured teams. Every interaction was a data point being harvested. As the hours passed, the heavy doors of the tower groaned open again and again, admitting the survivors of the gauntlet. Team Guy burst in, Rock Lee doing a handstand walk while Niji Hyuga strode past him, his white eyes sweeping the room with cold arrogance. Tenten sighed. Team Koratsuchi limped in. The Tsuchikige's granddaughter looked furious, her eyes locking onto Naruto with a mixture of hatred and grudging fear. Akatsuki offered a small, awkward bow in Naruto's direction, a warrior's acknowledgement of the one who had shattered his defense, before being dragged away by his leader. Team Yujito arrived. The mood shifted instantly. Omoi and Karui walked like funeral guards, their swords ready. Between them, Yujito Ni walked under her own power, though she moved stiffly, her ribs heavily bandaged. Her eyes were hard flint. She didn't look at Team 10. She looked straight ahead, her pride bruised but unbroken. Then, the doors slammed open with unnecessary force. Team Enzo had arrived. Shizuka walked in calmly, checking her herbal pouch. Heiei moved silently to a wall, blending into the shadows. But Enzo strolled into the center of the room, his adamantine staff resting across his shoulders, his grin wide and wild. He looked less like a ninja who had passed a test and more like a king inspecting his new court. Naruto was standing next to Shino, who was sitting on a bench, looking battered but alert. "He's here," Shino murmured, his insects buzzing agitatedly beneath his coat. Enzo's eyes scanned the room, ignoring the glares from other teams. His gaze landed on Shino. He changed course, walking directly toward them. "Bug boy," Enzo boomed, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "You're awake. Good. I was worried I hit you too hard." Shino adjusted his dark glasses. "It will take more than that to break an aburame." Enzo laughed, a bark of genuine delight. "That's the spirit." Then, Enzo's gaze shifted to the redhead standing beside Shino. The laughter died in his throat. His posture shifted instantly from relaxed to coiled. His hyper instinct flared, a primal warning siren going off in his brain. Naruto stared back, his blue eyes calm, deep, and dangerous. They didn't move, they didn't speak, but the air between them began to distort. Enzo let out a low breath, a grin slowly stretching across his face, sharper and more feral than before. "So, you're the one I sensed. Your aura. It's unlike anything I've ever felt." Naruto tilted his head slightly, a small, confident smirk playing on his lips. "And you must be the one who schooled Shino," Naruto replied, his tone casual but with a sharp edge underlying it. "He told me you were strong. Try not to break anything before we get to fight." Yeah. A microscopic pulse of Conqueror's Haki collided between them. It wasn't enough to knock anyone out, but the stone floor between their feet cracked with a sharp snap, as if an invisible weight had been dropped. The nearby genin flinched, looking around in confusion at the sudden drop in air pressure. "I can't wait," Enzo whispered, his hand tightening on his staff. "Get in line," Naruto said, his smirk widening. "It's a long list." The tension in the room was already suffocating, but it was about to get worse. As the final teams trickled in, a strange, magnetic gravity began to pull certain individuals together. It wasn't planned. It was instinctual, the call of the beasts. Near the center of the room, Gaara of the Sand stood alone, his arms crossed, sand drifting lazily from his gourd. His eyes were wide, maniacal, staring at nothing. Fu, the green-haired girl from Waterfall, buzzed over, her cheerful demeanor hiding the immense chakra coiling within her. She was followed closely by her genin teammates, disguised jonin. Yujito Ni, having separated from her team to get water, found herself drawn to the same circle. And Naruto, feeling the tug in his gut, walked over. The four of them stood in a loose circle. The chatter in the tower died down. The other genin, Sasuke, Neji, Shikamaru, Enzo, all stopped what they were doing and looked. They didn't know why, but looking at those four standing together triggered a deep biological alarm. It felt like standing next to a reactor core that was leaking radiation. "It's quiet," Fu chirped, though her eyes were serious. "But it's loud, isn't it?" "Mother is screaming," Gaara whispered, clutching his head. "She wants blood." Yujito scoffed, though sweat beaded on her forehead. "Control yourself, sand brat. You're leaking." Naruto said nothing. He just looked at them. For the four of them, and only them, the room vanished. Hovering over each of their heads, massive, translucent silhouettes manifested, composed of chakra so dense it looked like colored smoke. Above Gaara, the Shikaku shrieked, a bloated tanuki made of madness and sand, clawing at the air. Above Yujito, Matatabi prowled, a giant cat of blue spiritual fire, its two tails lashing with elegant malice. Above Fu, Chome spread its wings, a colossal armored beetle, its seven tails vibrating with a high-pitched hum. And above Naruto, the nine tails loomed. It was larger than the others. Its red chakra was darker, thicker. It didn't roar. It just stared down at the other beasts with slit red eyes. Its nine tails fanned out. The air in the tower grew heavy. Physical gravity seemed to increase. Genin fell to their knees, gasping for air. Kiba's dog, Akamaru, whined and hid inside Kiba's jacket. Neji's Byakugan veins bulged as he stared at the four, seeing blinding pillars of chakra reaching into the ceiling. "Monsters!" Sasuke whispered from the shadows, his hand trembling. He saw no spirits, but he felt the crushing weight of their existence. In the center of the storm, Naruto sighed. The red slit pupils of the Kyuubi flashed in his own eyes for a second. "Down!" Naruto commanded softly. He flared his conqueror's haki. It wasn't an attack. It was a blanket. He threw his will over the group, dampening the resonance of the bijou, forcing the chakra back down, suppressing the beasts with the authority of a king. The silhouettes faded. The gravity lifted. Naruto looked at the other three Jinchuriki. Gaara was staring at him with a mix of confusion and murder. Yujito looked impressed despite herself. Fu was grinning. "Let's save the noise for the arena," Naruto said calmly. The gathering of monsters dispersed, but the message had been sent. The exams weren't just a test of skill anymore. They were a collision course for the most dangerous weapons in the world. Chapter 25. Steel Rain and Crystal Ice. For days had passed since the survivors of the gauntlet stumbled into the central tower. For days of restless sleep, medical treatments, and the simmering tension of apex predators sharing a cage. The Grand Rock Coliseum. It was a marvel of brutalist architecture, hewn directly from the granite heart of the mountain. The arena floor was a massive circle of polished bedrock, surrounded by 12 towering natural stone pillars that looked like the teeth of the earth itself. There were no cheering crowds today. No daimyos, no civilians, and no kage. The thousands of stone seats rising vertically around them were empty, lending the space a hollow, gladiatorial silence. Only the surviving teams, their jonin senseis, and a handful of IWA ANBU stood on the observation balconies overlooking the pit. Naruto leaned against the railing, his single arm resting on the cold stone. His bandages were fresh, and though his chakra levels had returned to normal, his spirit still felt the dull ache of the Orochimaru fight. His eyes, however, were sharp, instantly locking onto the silver-haired figure of Kabuto Yakushi across the arena. Kabuto offered a polite nod. Naruto didn't blink. In the center of the arena floor stood a mountain of a man. Kitsuchi, the son of the Tsuchikage and one of the strongest shinobi in IWA. He crossed his massive arms, his voice booming without the need for a microphone, echoing off the canyon walls. "Congratulations on surviving the shattered peaks," Kitsuchi rumbled. His gaze was heavy, sweeping over the genin with critical appraisal. "But survival is not enough. The third test is a month away. There are too many of you. To ensure only the elite stand before the Tsuchikage, we will hold preliminaries immediately." He pointed a finger at the electronic board hovering above the arena. No rules. No time limit. The match ends on death, knockout, or surrender. If I determine the match is over, I will intervene. Do not argue with me. Match 1. Tenten, Konoha, versus Haku, Kiri. Will the combatants come down? Kitsuchi ordered. Up on the balcony, Rock Lee threw a fist into the air. Yash, Tenten. Show them the power of our youthful burning passion. Niji crossed his arms, his pale eyes analyzing the Kiri girl. Don't let your guard down, Tenten. That girl. Her chakra flow is unusually calm. Tenten tightened her gloves, a confident smirk on her face. Don't worry, Niji. I've got just the scroll for this. She vaulted over the railing, landing gracefully in the arena. Opposite her, Haku descended with a quiet, fluid grace. She wore her standard combat outfit, her mask tied to her hip. She offered a polite bow. I ask for a good match. Tenten pulled a scroll from her lower back, holding it ready. Same here, but don't expect me to go easy just because you're polite. Kitsuchi raised his hand. Begin. Boom. Tenten didn't wait. She didn't weave a sign. She simply punched the air. At the moment of full extension, a puff of smoke burst from her wrist tattoo. A heavy, iron-spiked flail materialized instantly, inheriting the momentum of her punch. It whipped across the distance, aiming to crush Haku's skull. Haku's eyes widened slightly. She dropped into a crouch, the spiked ball whistling over her head, the wind pressure ruffling her hair. Fast, Haku thought. She summons without hand seals. Haku pushed off the ground, skating backwards to create distance. As she moved, she threw 3 senbon needles with a flick of her wrist. Tenten twisted her body. She didn't dodge the needles. She unsealed a solid steel buckler on her left forearm, deflecting the needles with a sharp ping-ping-ping. In the same motion, she spun, unsealing a bow staff into her right hand. Too slow, Tenten yelled. She planted the staff and vaulted high into the air, using the height to gain leverage. She reached into her pouch and threw 2 scrolls upwards. Let's see you dance through this. Twin rising dragons. The scrolls unraveled like ribbons of smoke. Tenten spun between them, her hands a blur. She wasn't just throwing weapons. She was painting the air with steel. Kunai, shuriken, senbon, and explosive tags rained down in a deluge. Haku looked up at the iron storm. She didn't panic. She wove a single seal with one hand. Water release, water formation wall. She spat a stream of water that circled her and rose rapidly, forming a swirling barrier. The weapons slammed into the high-pressure water, their momentum killed, and were washed away. Tenten landed on one of the 12 stone pillars surrounding the arena. Water wall? Cute. How about this? She bit her thumb and slammed her hand onto a massive scroll she had unslung from her back. Bashozen. Coil of earth. A massive 2-ton boulder materialized above Haku's water wall. Gravity took over. The boulder crashed down, crushing the water defense and shattering against the arena floor with a deafening crash that shook the spectator stands. Dust billowed out, obscuring everything. Did she get her? Lee asked, gripping the railing. No, Naruto said quietly from his spot. She moved. From the dust cloud, a chill wind blew. The temperature in the arena plummeted. Ice release. Demonic mirroring ice crystals. The dust froze and fell as snow. Surrounding the stone pillar Tenten stood on were 20 massive, floating mirrors of ice. Haku stood in one, her reflection visible in all of them. Tenten looked around, her eyes narrowing. Kekiai Genkai, ice release. So that's your game. You possess an impressive arsenal. Haku's voice echoed from everywhere at once. But you cannot hit what isn't there. Haku stepped out of the mirror. Not one Haku but 20. They all threw senbon simultaneously. Tenten's eyes widened. She couldn't block 20 angles at once. She did the only thing she could. She jumped up, straight vertical, unsealing a large iron dome above her head to act as an umbrella against the needles. But Haku was faster. As Tenten reached the apex of her jump, Haku flashed out of a mirror directly above her. I have the high ground, Haku whispered. Haku swung her hand. Ice release, piercing gale. She formed a jagged blade of wind-infused ice in her hand and slashed downward. Tenten, reacting with pure Team Guy reflex, unsealed a chain sickle Kuzurigama to block. The ice blade met the steel chain. Crack. The force of Haku's strike, enhanced by gravity and her momentum, shattered the chain. Tenten was blasted downwards, crashing onto the top of the stone pillar she had just left. She rolled, gasping, a cut opening on her shoulder. She scrambled to her feet, panting. Okay, you're fast, really fast. Tenten reached into her flak jacket. She pulled out a scroll painted black. Her eyes hardened. I was saving this for the finals, but you leave me no choice. She threw the scroll into the center of the mirror formation. Ninja art. Determining blast. The scroll didn't unseal weapons. It unsealed a massive, compressed sphere of oil, followed immediately by a paper bomb. Boom! A massive fireball erupted inside the mirror dome. The heat was intense, the shockwave rattling the teeth of the observers. The ice mirrors hissed, steam billowing violently. Fire melts ice, Tenten shouted triumphantly. But as the steam cleared, the mirrors were still there. They were dripping, slightly cracked, but intact. Haku stepped out of a mirror, her clothes singed but her expression calm. My ice does not melt so easily against normal fire. She raised her hand. This ends now. Haku didn't throw a needle. She rushed Tenten. She moved between the mirrors with blinding speed, zip, 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 creating a disorienting web of afterimages. Tenten tried to track her, unsealing a bow staff to sweep the area. Come on! Haku appeared behind her. Tenten spun, swinging the staff. Haku dodged the swing, sliding on a patch of ice she created. Haku placed a hand on Tenten's chest. Ice release. Crystalline prison needles. 5 Senbon shot from Haku's fingers at point-blank range. They didn't pierce deep enough to kill, but the moment they touched Tenten's vest, they erupted into clusters of ice crystals. The ice grew instantly, encasing Tenten's arms and torso in a heavy, freezing block of crystal. The weight threw her off balance, and she fell to her knees, immobilized, her breath turning to white mist in the cold air. Tenten struggled, trying to reach a scroll, but her arms were frozen to her sides. The cold was seeping into her muscles, numbing her movements. Haku stood over her, a single sanbon held to Tenten's throat. You fought bravely, Haku said softly, but you are trapped. Tenten grit her teeth, shivering violently. She looked at the ice, then at Haku's calm eyes. She let out a frustrated sigh, her shoulders slumping as much as the ice allowed. I yield. Winner, Haku, Kitsuchi announced. The ice mirrors shattered into sparkling dust. Haku placed a hand on the ice prison encasing Tenten, flowing chakra into it to melt the bonds. As the ice fell away, Tenten shivered, rubbing her arms. Damn, Tenten muttered, putting her scrolls away. I thought the oil bomb would work. Haku offered a hand to help her up. It nearly did. If the mirrors were any weaker, they would have shattered. Your mastery of tools is terrifying. Tenten looked at the hand, then took it, a wry smile crossing her face. Yeah, well, next time, I'm bringing a bigger bomb. Up in the stands, Niji hummed. She lost, but she forced the ice user to reveal her hand. Acceptable. Naruto watched Haku walk back up the stairs, a small smile on his face. Nice work, Haku. You didn't just win, you controlled the fight. Kitsuchi cleared his throat, the sound rumbling through the arena. Next match. Match 2. Choji Akimichi, Konoha, versus Yoroi Akad, Konoha. A ripple of murmurs went through the Konoha genin. It was a civil war match. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered, gripping the railing. He looked down at Choji, who was sitting on the stone bench, breathing steadily but looking far from ready. The usually robust Akimichi looked unervingly gaunt, his skin hanging slightly loose after the rapid calorie burn of the 3 colored pills. His forearms were heavily bandaged, covering the deep cuts from Omoi and Karui's swords. Choji, Ino said softly, her hand hovering near his shoulder. You don't have to do this. You're still recovering. We cleared the second phase. That's enough. Choji stood up. His legs shook for a moment before he planted his feet firmly. He grabbed a handful of chips from his pouch. Not for pleasure, but for fuel, and crunched them grimly. I can't stop now, Choji said, his voice quiet but firm. Naruto fought a Sannin. We took down a Jinchuriki together. If I quit just because I'm tired, I can't call myself your teammate. Across the arena, Kabuto Yakushi adjusted his glasses, a sympathetic smile on his face. Good luck, Yoroi, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Go easy on him. He's still recovering from the treatment I gave him. The treatment, Naruto thought, his eyes narrowing from his spot on the opposite balcony. He saw the way Kabuto's words subtly undermined Choji, painting him as a charity case while simultaneously reminding Team 10 of their debt. It was a psychological knife twist. Yoroi Akato stepped into the arena. He wore a high-collared dark suit and sunglasses, his face hidden behind a cloth mask. He didn't look sympathetic. He looked hungry. Begin, Kitsuchi roared. Yoroi moved instantly. He knew Choji's condition. He sprinted across the polished bedrock, closing the distance with aggressive speed. Choji reacted, his instincts sharp even if his body was lagging. He wove a hand seal, partial multi-size technique. He aimed to expand his right arm for a clothesline, but the transformation was sluggish. His arm swelled, but not to its full size, the chakra flow sputtering like a dying engine. Yoroi ducked under the clumsy swing, sliding on his knees across the smooth stone. He popped up inside Choji's guard, his right hand glowing with a faint, blue aura of chakra. Chakra absorption. Yoroi slammed his palm onto Choji's exposed stomach. Gah! Choji gasped. It wasn't a physical pain. It was a sensation of sudden, violently induced vertigo. He felt what little energy he had regained over the last 4 days being siphoned away like water down a drain. His knees buckled, and the partial expansion of his arm vanished instantly. You're running on fumes, fatso? Yoroi sneered, pressing his advantage. He kept his hand planted, maintaining the connection. Kabuto told us about the pills. You burned all your calories. You have nothing left to give me, but I'll take the scraps anyway. Choji tried to push him away, but his limbs felt like lead. The drain was paralyzing. He dropped to one knee, his vision swimming. Choji! Shikamaru yelled from the balcony. Up in the stands, Naruto watched, his face impassive but his single hand gripping the railing hard enough to crack the stone. Chakra absorption. A hard counter for someone with low reserves. Choji, remember what I taught you. Haki isn't chakra. Yoroi raised his other hand, aiming a chakra-draining strike at Choji's neck to finish it. Just stay down. You owe us your life anyway. That sentence pierced the fog in Choji's mind. I owe them. Kabuto saved me. But then he heard another voice in his memory. A memory from a training field in Konoha. Haki isn't about energy, Choji. It's about will. Even if your chakra is low, even if you can't move a muscle, if you have the will to protect, your body will harden. It comes from the spirit, not the coils. Choji's eyes snapped open. He looked at Yoroi, the leech draining his strength. I owe Kabuto for saving me, but I owe Naruto, Asuma-sensei, Shino, Shikamaru and Ino for believing in me. He stopped trying to mold chakra. He stopped trying to expand. He focused entirely on the burning desire to stand up. Yoroi frowned behind his sunglasses. The flow of chakra from Choji had stopped. Finally ran dry? Time to sleep. He brought his hand down. Clang. Yoroi's hand didn't hit soft flesh. It hit something that felt like a solid iron wall. He cried out, cradling his wrist, which throbbed from the impact. He looked down. Choji hadn't moved, but the skin on his neck and shoulder, where Yoroi had struck, was coated in a deep, lustrous black sheen. What? Yoroi stammered. He reached out again with his draining palm, trying to suck energy from the black surface. What is this jutsu? Nothing happened. There was no chakra to drain. The black coating was impermeable, a spiritual armor that offered no sustenance to the parasite. Choji stood up. He looked tired, sweat pouring down his face, his legs trembling from physical exhaustion. But his right fist was clenched tight, and the black armament Haki spread down his arm, encompassing his hand. You can take my chakra, Choji said, his voice raspy but echoing in the silent arena. But you can't eat my will. Yoroi took a step back, sensing a danger his sensors couldn't quantify. Bluffing. He threw a spread of shuriken and charged again, aiming for Choji's face. Choji didn't dodge. He swatted the shuriken aside with his blackened forearm. Ping, 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 and stepped into the charge. He didn't use the multi-size technique. He didn't have the calories for it. He didn't need it. He pulled his fist back. The air around his hand distorted slightly from the density of his haki. A Kimichi style, iron will punch. It was a simple, straight right cross. Yoroi tried to block, crossing his arms and activating his chakra absorption to weaken the blow. It was a mistake. Choji's haki-coated fist slammed into Yoroi's crossed arms. The absorption technique failed completely against the non-chakra force. The impact broke through Yoroi's guard with a sickening crunch of bone. The punch carried through, slamming into Yoroi's chest. Boom! Yoroi was launched off his feet. He flew backward 20 meters, skipping once off the stone floor like a stone on a pond before crashing violently into one of the 12 pillars surrounding the arena. The stone pillar cracked on impact. Yoroi slid to the ground, unconscious. His chest caved in slightly, foam leaking from his mouth. Choji stood there, his fist still extended, the black haki slowly fading away to reveal his bruised knuckles. He swayed, his vision tunneling. Winner, Choji Akimichi, Kitsuchi announced, eyeing the crater in the pillar with mild surprise. Choji smiled weakly up at the balcony where Team 10 was cheering. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed face forward onto the stone, snoring loudly before he even hit the ground. Medical ninjas rushed in immediately. On the balcony, Kabuto adjusted his glasses, the light hiding his eyes. Fascinating, he whispered to himself. He completely bypassed the chakra network. The absorption had zero effect on that black coating. It seems the data collection continues. Across the arena, Naruto let out a breath, his shoulders relaxing. He did it. He figured it out. He glanced at Sasuke. The Uchiha was staring at Choji's unconscious form, his hands clenching and unclenching. Sasuke had seen it clearly with his Sharingan. The chakra had stopped, yet the power had increased. Him too, Sasuke thought, frustration gnawing at him. Everyone is moving forward. Everyone is evolving, and I'm just watching. Next match, Kitsuchi bellowed. Match 3, Sasuke Uchiha, Konoha versus Shigure, AME. Sasuke's head snapped up. Finally. Don't blink, Sasuke muttered to Sakura and Naruto. He vaulted over the railing, landing in the arena with a dark, desperate intensity. He didn't just want to win. He needed to destroy something. Match 3, Sasuke Uchiha, Konoha versus Shigure, AME. Sasuke vaulted over the earth railing of the balcony, his descent silent. He landed on the arena floor with a soft bend of his knees, his dark eyes instantly sweeping the terrain. The bedrock was a mess. Shallow pools of water from the Kiri girl's jutsu reflected the lighting, marred by slick, iridescent streaks of unburned oil from 1010 bomb. Opposite him, Shigure walked forward. The AIM Nin stood a towering 6'5", a white bandage wrapped tightly around his forehead. 2 vertical scars ran down his cheek, blinding his permanently closed right eye, while the right corner of his mouth was pulled tight by crude stitches. On his back rested a custom sheath holding 3 closed umbrellas. An Uchiha, Shigure said. His voice was a harsh, raspy growl, the stitches on his lip pulling taut as he spoke. They breed you soft in the leaf. You look like you've never had to fight for a meal in your life. Sasuke didn't reply. He didn't care about the guy's opinions or the man's scars. He only cared about the burning inadequacy clawing at his chest. Naruto defeated a Sannin. Choji broke a chakra drainer with pure will. Sasuke's hands clenched into fists. I am an Uchiha. I am the elite. I will not be left behind. Begin. Kitsuchi's voice echoed off the cavern walls. Shigure moved his hands in a rapid blur, ending on the tiger seal. He exhaled a burst of chakra straight up into the air. Water release, rain domain. A thick, gray mist shot from him, expanding rapidly toward the sky. Within seconds, the atmospheric pressure shifted, and a cold, steady drizzle began to fall exclusively over the fighting ring. Sasuke's hair flattened against his forehead. The rain was freezing. It pattered against the stone, creating a constant, hissing white noise that instantly scrambled sound. He's masking his movements, Sasuke analyzed, his Sharingan flaring to life, the twin tomo spinning in a sea of crimson. Sasuke didn't wait. He kicked off the ground, aiming to close the distance. But as his sandal hit a patch where rainwater mixed with the residual oil, his footing gave way by a fraction of an inch. His momentum stuttered. It was all the opening Shigeru needed. The aim Nin unslung an umbrella, gripping it like a sword. He stepped into Sasuke's faltering charge and swung the heavy, chakra steel tip directly at Sasuke's throat. Sasuke leaned back, the metal tip whistling past his Adam's apple, and brought up a kunai to parry the follow-up strike. Clang. Sparks showered in the rain. Shigeru's physical strength was immense. The impact sent a painful vibration up Sasuke's arm, forcing him to slide backward across the wet stone. "Too slow, prodigy," Shigeru barked. He pressed a mechanism on the handle. The umbrella detached from its shaft, splitting into twin steel batons. Shigeru attacked with brutality. Left baton aimed at the knee, right baton thrusting at the face. Because of his blind right eye, Shigeru intentionally over-rotated his left side, presenting a false opening. Sasuke's Sharingan saw the opening. He ducked the face thrust and drove his elbow toward Shigeru's exposed ribs. But Shigeru's rain domain wasn't just for stealth. The vibrations of the droplets hitting Sasuke's arm telegraphed the counter. Shigeru pivoted on his heel, using the momentum to bring his knee up in a vicious strike that slammed into Sasuke's stomach. Sasuke hacked out a glob of saliva, the breath driven from his lungs. He was launched backward, crashing hard into the cluster of shattered boulders left over from the first match. Up on the balcony, Sakura gripped the railing. Naruto watched silently, his arms crossed, his haki sensing the spike of panic and rage blooming in Sasuke's chest. Sasuke scrambled up behind the rubble, wiping a trickle of blood from his chin. His clothes were soaked through, heavy and clinging to his limbs. He breathed in sharply, weaving hand seals. He inhaled, gathering chakra in his chest. Shigeru leaped over the rubble, batons raised. Fire release, great fireball technique. A massive sphere of superheated fire erupted from Sasuke's mouth. However, the environment betrayed him. The cold rain instantly reacted to the intense heat. The fireball didn't incinerate. It flash-boiled the moisture in the air. A colossal cloud of dense, scalding steam exploded outward, swallowing both fighters. "Foolish!" Shigeru's voice echoed from everywhere within the whiteout. "In the rain, fire is just a smokescreen for the hunter." Sasuke stood back-to-back with the rubble, his Sharingan darting frantically. He couldn't see. The steam was too thick, and the sound of the rain masked Shigeru's footsteps. Swish. Sasuke threw himself to the left. A steel baton slammed into the rock where his head had been. "He's tracking me," Sasuke realized, his chest heaving. "The rain. He feels the displacement of the drops when I move." Sasuke reached into his pouch, pulling out 2 shuriken with wire attached. He threw them blindly into the steam, letting the wire spool out, hoping to catch his pursuer. Up here. The steam thinned as a gust of wind parted it. Shigeru was standing atop the intact, towering stone pillar on the western edge of the arena. He had reattached his umbrella and drawn the other 2 from his back. He threw all 3 high into the air above the arena. They popped open, spinning like tops. Hidden art, bloody rain funeral. Thousands of sunbon needles rained down, but they didn't fall straight. Infused with wind and water chakra, they formed a localized descending vortex. Sasuke broke into a sprint, his Sharingan tracking the trajectory of the steel rain. He dodged right. A needle embedded itself an inch deep into the bedrock. He flipped forward, 3 needles clipped his sleeve. But there were too many, and they were moving. Sasuke watched in horror as a cluster of needles he had already dodged suddenly curved mid-air, guided by Shigeru's elite chakra control, tracking his heat and movement. A needle tore through the skin of Sasuke's left shoulder. Another grazed his thigh. He grunted, his pace slowing as the wet, heavy fabric of his clothes dragged him down. He was herded back toward the western edge of the arena, his back hitting the cold, damp stone. He was pinned. Above him, the vortex of needles condensed, hundreds of them forming a spear of flying metal, aimed directly at his chest. "Dodge," his brain screamed. "I can't," his body replied. His muscles were burning, his lungs working like bellows. The visual information flooding his Sharingan was clear. There was no physical angle of escape. The needles covered every angle. Am I going to die here? Sasuke thought, his back pressed hard against the stone. While Naruto sits up there, watching, am I just weak? A memory flashed. Naruto casually raising a single, black-coated hand. Power born of pure, unyielding will. No, Sasuke thought. The panic in his chest condensed, crystallizing into a dark, desperate pride. I don't have his armor, but I have these eyes. Sasuke stopped looking at the needles. He looked up, past the spinning umbrellas, cutting through the rain, and locked his gaze directly onto Shigure's single visible eye. Sasuke pushed his chakra out, not into his muscles, but directly into his optic nerves. The two tomo in his blood-red irises spun so fast they blurred into rings. A sharp, tearing pain erupted behind his eyes, and a single drop of blood leaked from his left tear duct, mixing with the rain on his cheek. Shigure stood on the pillar, his hands forming the seal of control, a cruel smirk twisting the unstitched half of his mouth. Dai, Uchiha. The needle vortex slammed into Sasuke. Shigure watched with deep satisfaction as hundreds of steel senbon tore through the boy's body, pinning him to the cracked pillar. Blood sprayed, mixing with the rain. Sasuke's head slumped forward, lifeless. Too easy, Shigure muttered, turning his back on the corpse to look at the proctor. Call it. Call what? Shigure's heart stopped. What? He looked back down at the pillar. The pinned, bloody body of Sasuke Uchiha wavered, the image distorting like a reflection in a disturbed pond, before dissolving into a mirage. Genjutsu? When? In the fraction of a second when their eyes met, Sasuke hadn't moved his body. He had moved Shigure's mind, projecting a false reality where the attack landed. While Shigure watched a ghost die, the real Sasuke had used the blind spot created by the illusion to sprint up the blind side of the pillar. Shigure spun wildly, swinging his baton, but he was too late. Sasuke was in the air, slightly above him. He had a length of ninja wire held between his teeth, the other ends wrapped securely around the base of the umbrella Shigure had left hovering. With a sharp tug, Sasuke yanked the wire, pulling the heavy umbrellas down and entangling Shigure's arms in the steel strings. Sasuke landed softly on the pillar behind the bound Aimnin. He didn't weave signs. His hands were already in the tiger seal, positioned mere inches from the wire in his mouth. Fire release, dragon fire technique. A focused, highly compressed stream of fire erupted from Sasuke's mouth. It didn't bloom into a ball. It ran straight down the conductive wire, a screaming serpent of flame that bypassed the damp air completely. The fire slammed into Shigure's chest at point-blank range. Shigure screamed, a raw, horrific sound that tore from his throat as the concussive force and extreme heat blasted him off the pillar. He plummeted like a burning stone, crashing violently onto the wet ground below. The impact echoed loudly, followed by the sizzle of his burning flak jacket meeting the puddles. He didn't move again. Sasuke stood atop the pillar. The rain washed the soot and sweat from his face, but it didn't wash away the thin trail of blood leaking from his left eye. His chest heaved violently, his stomach expanding and contracting as he desperately tried to pull oxygen into his burning lungs. The chakra exhaustion was severe. Coercing the mind of a skilled ninja had nearly fried his optic nerve. But as he looked down at his defeated opponent, the pain was secondary. Winner, Sasuke Uchiha, Kitsuchi announced, his voice booming over the sound of the rain. Sasuke slowly turned his head, his two Tomo Sharingan still active, bleeding and manic. He didn't look at Sakura, who was cheering, or Kakashi. He looked directly across the vast space of the Colosseum, finding the red-haired boy leaning casually against the railing. I am an Uchiha. Sasuke's bloody glare seemed to scream across the void. I don't need your will. Naruto met the glare. He didn't smile. He didn't scowl. He simply acknowledged the raw, volatile power he saw burning in his teammates' eyes and gave a single, slow nod. The gap hadn't closed, but Sasuke had finally built a bridge. Match 4, Omoi, Kumo, versus Dosu Kanuta, OTO. On the balcony, Omoi let out a long, exaggerated groan, removing his lollipop from his mouth. A sound ninja? Are you kidding me? What if he uses some weird acoustic genjutsu that makes me think I'm a potato? What if his attacks vibrate at the exact resonant frequency of my skull and my head just pops like a melon? Karui, if I die down there, tell the Raikage I always respected him, even if he yells too much. Karui punched him hard in the shoulder. Stop overthinking and just cut him down. Don't you dare embarrass Kumo again after what happened with those leaf brats. Omoi rubbed his arm, sighing as he vaulted over the railing. He landed on the damp bedrock with a heavy splash, his dark eyes scanning the lingering puddles and slick oil patches left over from the earlier bouts. From the opposite side, Dosu Kinyuta walked forward. The sound ninja moved with a deliberate, hunched posture. His single visible eye analyzed the Kumo. On his right arm, the resonating echo speaker gleamed under the harsh sunlight. Begin! Kitsuchi's voice dropped like a stone. Omoi didn't rush in. His mind, prone to catastrophic overthinking, was actually a tactical asset. He wears a giant metal speaker on his arm. He's not gonna punch me with it. It's a ranged or mid-range weapon. Sound waves. You can't block sound with a sword. Dosu raised his right arm, pointing the speaker toward the ground. He channeled a pulse of chakra. BZZZZZT. It wasn't a projectile, it was a frequency. The shallow puddles across the arena floor instantly rippled, breaking into violent patterns. The air itself seemed to blur, a heat-haze distortion radiating outward from Dosu. Omoi's teeth ground against his lollipop stick. The sudden shift in air pressure made his eardrums ache before the attack even reached him. Too far, Omoi muttered. He gripped the hilt of his katana and kicked off a dry patch of bedrock. He didn't run in a straight line. He zigzagged, his boots finding purchase on the scattered rubble from Tenton's boulder to avoid the water. He closed the distance in 3 heartbeats, drawing his blade in a blindingly fast, lateral arc, cloud-style front beheading. Dosu didn't retreat. He stepped into the swing, raising his right arm to intercept. Clang. The steel of Omoi's katana bit into the thick metal casing of Dosu's speaker arm. Sparks showered over the damp stone. Omoi's physical strength, honed by Killer Bee, pushed Dosu back an inch, the sound ninja's sandals grinding against the bedrock. Gotcha, Omoi grunted, applying more torque. Did you? Dosu asked, his voice deadpan. Dosu flexed his forearm. The speaker whined. Resonating echo drill. A point-blank concussive wave of sound erupted from the speaker. It didn't travel through the air. It traveled directly up the steel of Omoi's own katana, right into his hands, up his arms, and into his skull. Omoi's eyes rolled back. A sickening, high-pitched screech tore through his inner ear. The fluid in his cochlea violently shook, instantly destroying his equilibrium. Omoi's pupils dilate, the world tilting sideways. Blood began to trickle from his left ear. He lost his grip on his sword. His knees buckled, and he collapsed sideways, splashing into a puddle, gagging as a wave of intense nausea hit his stomach. Dosu stood over him, adjusting the speaker on his arm. The human body is 70% water. Sound travels beautifully through liquid. A sword is just a tuning fork. You defeated yourself. Dosu raised his arm again, aiming the speaker directly at Omoi's chest, preparing a blast to liquefy his organs. Omoi forced his eyes open. The world was spinning, his balance completely gone. I can't stand. If I stand, I'll fall over. If he fires that, my heart stops. He didn't try to stand. From his prone position in the puddle, Omoi slammed his hands together. Lightning release, thunderbolt. He didn't aim at Dosu. He slammed his palms directly into the water he was lying in. A massive surge of blue electricity violently discharged from his hands, turning the entire puddle into a high-voltage death trap. Dosu's single eye widened. He abandoned his attack, channeling chakra to his feet, and launched himself backward, leaping onto the base of the nearest intact stone pillar to escape the electrified water. The damp stone hissed as the lightning jumped and crackled across the arena floor, frying the bedrock. Omoi used the distraction to roll away, snatching up his dropped katana. He staggered to his feet, swaying heavily. The world was still tilting, a constant ringing deafening him. Okay, hand-to-hand is a death sentence, Omoi calculated, his chest heaving, fighting down the urge to vomit. He needs a medium to transmit the sound effectively. Air is bad, metal is worse. I need to overload him. Dosu clung to the side of the stone pillar, looking down. A desperate move. You've ruined your own footing. You can barely stand. Yeah, well, standing is overrated. Omoi spat, spitting his lollipop stick into the dirt. He gripped his katana with both hands. Blue lightning began to crackle up the length of the steel, buzzing like a swarm of angry hornets. He took a deep breath, fighting the vertigo, and charged the pillar. Dosu watched him come. He's slower. His balance is compromised. I just need one solid blast. Omoi leaped, his trajectory slightly off due to his ruined inner ear, but his speed was undeniable. He brought the lightning-infused blade back for a crushing downward strike. Dosu braced himself against the pillar, pointing his speaker directly at the airborne Kumogakure ninja. He poured maximum chakra into the device. Resonating echo drill, max output. A visible shockwave, powerful enough to crack the stone pillar beneath Dosu's feet, blasted upward. It slammed directly into Omoi's chest midair. The impact was devastating. Omoi's body convulsed violently, the sheer acoustic pressure visibly rippling his clothes and skin. Up in the stands, Karui screamed his name. But Dosu's triumph lasted less than a microsecond. As the sound wave crushed Omoi, the Kumo ninja didn't bleed or fall. Instead, his body lost its physical form, dissolving into a blinding silhouette of pure, crackling blue energy. A lightning clone. Dosu's mind raced, realizing the horrific mistake he had just made. Lightning release. Clone detonation. The clone absorbed the sound wave and instantly violently destabilized. It exploded at point-blank range, inches from Dosu's face. The visual was a blinding flash of white and blue. But the real weapon wasn't the electricity. It was the byproduct of a massive, instant electrical discharge in a damp atmosphere. Thunder. A concussive clap of thunder, louder than any explosive tag, detonated directly in front of the sound ninja. For a man who had surgically enhanced his hearing to pick up the scratch of a pencil across a room, an uncontrolled thunderclap at zero distance was apocalyptic. Dosu's metal speaker shattered from the electrical overload, but that was secondary. Dosu screamed, a raw, primal sound of absolute agony. Blood sprayed from both of his ears, his eardrums completely ruptured. The sheer acoustic trauma scrambled his brain, short-circuiting his nervous system. He plummeted from the pillar, crashing limply onto the wet bedrock. He lay there, twitching, his hands weakly clawing at his bleeding ears, utterly incapacitated by his own biological weapon being turned against him. From the shadows behind the adjacent pillar, the real Omoi stepped out. He was leaning heavily against the stone, his face pale, still fighting the vertigo from the first exchange. He had cast the clone the moment the steam and lightning had obscured Dosu's vision earlier. He walked slowly toward the writhing sound ninja, his katana drawn. He looked down, his breathing ragged, the belly of his flak jacket rising and falling with exhaustion. You guys really need to think about the drawbacks of super senses? Omoi muttered, resting the tip of his blade against Dosu's throat. Loud noises hurt. Kitsuchi stepped forward, assessing the blood pouring from Dosu's ears and his inability to defend himself. Winner, Omoi. Karui let out a massive breath, leaning over the railing. See, I told you to stop overthinking and just blast him. Omoi sheathed his sword with a shaky hand. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like he was trying very hard not to throw up. He gave a weak thumbs up to the balcony before a medical team rushed out to escort him. From his vantage point, Naruto nodded approvingly. Smart. He used the enemy's greatest strength as their fatal weakness. The Cloud Ninja aren't just muscle. He glanced back over at Team Kabuto. The silver-haired medic was writing furiously in a small notebook, his eyes tracking the damage done to Dosu. The games were only getting more dangerous.